Welcome back to episode 8 of Your Questions, My Answers. I am Walt from thestuggearreview.com, and got a little bit of bad news. Unfortunately today, I am flying solo here answering your questions. As you all know, or as everyone is aware, Jerry's got some personal family business to take care of, so he was unable to sit in today. And unfortunately, Brian got tied up this morning. He had some things to do, and unfortunately, they ended up taking longer than he would have liked. So, rather than push this off for 2 weeks and miss a bi-weekly showing, decided to go ahead and do the best I could solo and see if we couldn't get some questions answered. So, just before we get started, I'm here smoking a Carlos Terrano 1916 Cameroon, which was provided to me by Brian a couple weeks back. We did a trade. He wanted to try the TNT Padron alternatives, and I had not tried a Tampa Sweetheart, and so we just did a trade, and this is one of the extras he sent me. So thanks, Brian. I look forward to smoking further into this. And unlike usual, this isn't in the morning. It's actually mid-afternoon, so you may hear some birds chirping, kids play, and all that happy background noise that is more than likely going to pop up throughout the recording. So my apologies for that ahead of time. And just drinking some Sprite. Generally, I don't typically like to drink sweet drinks like soda with cigars, but I just didn't feel like water, and I'm planning on going out later, so no beer. I'm a big advocate of no alcohol on a motorcycle, so so I'm going to avoid the beer. Maybe I'll have some beers tonight with some more cigars. But anyway, let's move right along and get to question number 1. Question number 1 comes from Steven, and he writes, I've noticed that my cigars tend to get hot toward the last third or last quarter of the cigar. It becomes hard to taste, or the taste changes to something unpleasant. I tend to get this effect on all my cigars. Is it possible that I'm smoking the cigar incorrectly or too fast? Have you guys had experience with this problem? Anyway, keep up the great work. Well, Stephen, getting hot at the last third and the last quarter. It's typically due to an elevated smoking rate. So what's happening is, as the cigar is getting shorter, the tobacco is becoming pliable because of the excess heat, and now everything is kind of getting condensed and it's really heating up in there, and that's what's causing an unpleasant flavor and the extra heat. As the cigar tends to get really short, once you hit that final third, you need to kind of slow down a little bit. If you believe in the philosophy of taking one puff per minute, once you hit that final third, you may want to think about taking one puff every minute and a half, or possibly even every 2 minutes. And, that's a whole ratio thing. Not everyone takes one puff per minute. I know I don't take one puff per minute. So, say, generalize, you take 2 to 3 puffs a minute. You might want to back that off to, 1 to 2 every minute. Once you get real short, this will keep the cigar from overheating, and ultimately will keep the flavors crisp as well. Well, that wasn't so bad. Let's move right along. Question 2 comes from Lou Dog, and this was posted on the Padron Anniversary article. And he says, Hey Walt, I want to ask you a question about when cigars are stored improperly. Because lately I've picked up a few cigars from some local shops, and some of these shops don't seem to know what they're doing when it comes down to storing them. About halfway through, the first one of the cigars I picked up got a pungent taste. This has happened with all the ones I've picked up from these shops, and I thought maybe it's when a cigar doesn't get the right amount of humidity. So I wanted to make sure that this problem was in the storing of the cigar and not in the cigar itself. Well, there's a lot of things that can cause foul flavors, but if you are getting the cigars from one source and you're always getting an unpleasant flavor, I would put money on the fact that it's the source that's the problem, and it's not not the cigars themselves. Especially if you can pick up different brands of cigars from the same source, and they all have this pungent or unenjoyable flavor. It's 9 times out of 10 it's going to be the source where you purchase those cigars. And what happens is, a lot of times, I shouldn't say usually, but a lot of times, cigar shops will store their cigars wet. Sometimes upwards of 75 to 80% humidity. And the reason behind this is to combat the fact that that big walk-in humidor door, that 3-foot wide door by 6'8" tall, is constantly being opened and closed, and you're pulling humidity out, pushing humidity in. Everything gets really unbalanced. So you kind of ramp up the humidity in the room to act as a buffer, so that that door can open and close, and you don't have to worry about your cigars drying out too quickly. So the unpleasant flavor is probably due to the fact that they're a little too wet. I would think that if you take, do an experiment. If you have an empty humidor, or you want to spend a couple of bucks, Cigars International always runs these little deals where you get 8 cigars and a free humidor for $20. And do something like that where you can get a humidor, pick up a hydrometer, season the humidor first, so that you know that it's not going to wick up the excess humidity. Go pick up some cigars from your shop, put them in the humidor, empty, just the humidor, a couple of cigars from that one shop, and a hygrometer. And just look and see where those cigars are. Eventually they're going to dry out because the humidor is empty, but initially it'll give you a ballpark figure on where your cigar shop owner is keeping the humidity level of the cigars. So then you can gauge it from there. If it's really high, you may want to consider buying from another source, because that can be a big deal. If you're buying a lot of cigars that are overly wet, you bring them home, you put them in your humidor, ultimately it's going to raise the humidity in your entire humidor. Everything's going to get a little wet or a little more humid, and it's going to cause problems with all your cigars. Now, if you've got like a big cooler, 100-quart cooler, and you're bringing home, let's say, 5 cigars a week, and you've got loads of cigars in this cooler, you don't have anything to worry about. Everything's going to stabilize itself. But if you've got a small desktop unit, it may become a problem putting all those over-humidified sticks in with your regular supply. And I know that also some cigars actually smoke better at a lower humidity. And I remember seeing that you posted a comment about you thought that 65% was more for Cuban cigars, and generally that is true in most cases, but some cigars actually taste better at a lower humidity, such as 65%. And the best example of this was some information I got from Java. He had told me that storing the Padron Laundress down at 65% makes them taste much better than 70%. So I gave it a shot. I picked up some 65% beads. I lowered the humidity of the Padrones, and they were much, much better than they were at 70%. Not only did they smoke better, but they actually tasted better. So it's really a trial and error kind of thing. You want to, you just want to play around the humidities. Try to stay between 65 and 70%. You can find a source for 60% beads, but I wouldn't recommend getting down quite that low. And you don't want to get too much over 70% unless it just happens to be a spike and it's just for a short amount of time. You don't want to keep your cigar stored, at a constant, 72%. It's just a little too high. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Anyway, I'm going to take a quick break, and I will come back with question 3 from Nathan. So I'll be back in a few minutes. Welcome back, and I'm all ready to go with question 3. And as I mentioned before I cut the camera off, this question's from Nathan, and he writes, I watched the last installment of the Q&A segment. Walt mentioned a high-priced cigar in Florida. The cigar comes from a restaurant that has the most expensive cigar menu in the country, the most being a 1925 La Corona cigar that he believes to be around the neighborhood of $1,200. He says it comes with a complimentary bottle of Prohibition-era whiskey for that $1,200. And I lost my place there. He says he went to Hong Kong, which many people don't know is the cigar capital of the world right now. and saw some of the world's most expensive cigars that were anywhere from $1,000 each up to as much as $2,400 each, all being Cuban and aged for at least 20 years. Now, as a cigar smoker that loves cigars, would you be willing to pay that price for these high-end cigars, given that you had stumbled across the money to spend on that particular cigar? And I don't really need to give this much thought. That is definitely a big fat no. Even if I had more money than I knew what to do with, I could still not bring myself to spending that kind of money on a single cigar. The fact of the matter is, these cigars would have had to, or would need to be stored in pristine condition. Just think about, you've got a natural product, which is basically rolled up leaves, and you're storing this biological product for 20 years. I know cigars get better with age, but I would think that the cigar would begin to deteriorate at some point along those 20 years. But I think that's quite outrageous. And for a $1,200 cigar, that's aged for at least 20 years. 20 years is a little misleading because we're talking about pre-embargo cigars that are 50 plus years old for $1,200. I just don't think a cigar, unless it was kept in the absolute most pristine condition, could be worth that kind of money over the course of 50 plus years. I would just think it would begin to deteriorate, and basically you're just throwing the money away. I really don't think that you would gain anything from having a cigar that old for that much money, other than bragging rights. So anyway, I'm going to definitely make sure that question gets brought up again in the next Q&A segment, because I'd love to hear what Jeremy Bryan's take is on it. But for me, nah, definitely not. Would not pay that kind of money for a single cigar, even if it came with a Prohibition bottle of complimentary whiskey. So that's that. Anyway, next question comes from Stephen. This is another different Stephen from the first one, who wrote in question number 1. And Stephen says, I have a couple of geek questions for you. The first is probably individual and a little scientific. He said he had read this study, and the synopsis of it is that it classifies some people as non-tasters, tasters, and super tasters based upon the number of taste buds on the palate, or on the tongue. He says, I believe this directly relates to cigar smoking experiences. Do you think there is merit to this, and what would you classify yourself as? He says, love the site, hope to hear from you soon. Well, Stephen, I definitely think there's a merit to it. It's amazing to watch some people that are, I guess they're kind of borderline food critics, where you go out with someone and they're really involved with the food they're eating or the wine they're drinking. They can taste all these crazy things going on. So I definitely believe there is definitely truth to that. And I've also had the pleasure of being friends with some people that couldn't taste anything, and so I have experience with both ends of the scale. As far as where I am, I think I might be in the middle. I certainly can taste stuff, but by no means do I think I'm a super taster, and I think it would be pretty arrogant for me to say that I was, because honestly I believe that I'm not. I'm sure there's many people that are even in the cigar community on a regular basis, sort of like what Stogie Review does. You've got Doc, Stogie Fresh. You've got Tom from Keepers of the Flame. All these, and numerous others that do these cigar reviews. And I think that their palate is much better than mine, and so I definitely don't think I'm at the top of the spectrum. Again, another question that I'd like to bring up to Brian and Jerry, but I'm absolutely positive that they would say pretty much the same thing. They're not the type of people that are going to come out and say, I'm a super taster, or or just something like that. So anyway, for me, I think I'm probably in the middle, and I think that just because sometimes I really struggle to grasp a taste in a particular cigar. Sometimes it takes 2 and 3 cigars until you finally realize what that flavor is, and that's the whole reason behind smoking multiples of a single cigar. So realistically, I'm in the middle. I'm stumbling with myself. So I'm going to take another quick break, and we'll be back, and we have question 5 from Ted, and I think we're about at the halfway point, because I think I prepped for 10 questions, knowing that I would get through them pretty quickly. So I will be back in a few, and we'll be moving right along. Welcome back. Before I go any further, I know there's some people out there that don't visit the website, cigarreview.com. You just watch the videos direct from YouTube. And if you're sitting back wondering, where did the first 7 episodes come from of this, you definitely have to head over to cigarreview.com and look them up there. Because Jerry usually hosts this. Jerry usually has them on his account, and I'm not sure if they're all on YouTube or not. I know they're hosted on Blip TV for the site, so I'm positive that's where they are. I just don't know if Jerry backs them up on YouTube or not. So if you are a faithful YouTube watcher, head over to stogierreview.com and check out episode 1 through 7, so you can get all caught up. And the next episode will most likely be Jerry hosting once again, so it probably won't be on my YouTube account. Anyway, let's move on to question 5, and this comes from Ted. He says, "Hi Jerry and Walt. I've been smoking cigars for a few years. I don't smoke every day, so when I do smoke, I like to get the maximum enjoyment from the experience. I primarily smoke the Padron Maduros 3000 and 6000. I really like the medium body and spicy flavors I get from the Padron. My question is, how difficult would it be for you guys to take the cigar reviews you have done and group them for us by flavor profile? That way, a guy like me could try cigars in the flavor profiles I know I like, and if I tried something from a different group, I would know which cigars you thought were similar in flavor. Keep up the great work, and keep the smoking lamp lit." Well, Ted, this is more of a question for Jerry. Because Jerry does most of the back-end work on the site. But as far as grouping them by flavor profile, I think that would be kind of tough, just because we don't have a database system set up. It works right off our past review page. We manually put them in there. They're in alphabetical order. There's nothing fancy to it. We just drop the new review in right there in the page. That's about it. But as far as grouping them by flavor profile, I think that would be great. I just don't know that it's possible for us to do it right now. But it's something that I would definitely like to see in the future. I appreciate you writing that in, and I think it's a great tip that I would like to see implemented in the future. As far as when it's going to be implemented, I really have no idea, or if it really can be done with our current setup. So with that said, my apologies at the moment. No, we don't have really any intentions of doing that right now, or any time in the very near future. But keep an eye on things, and maybe that'll get implemented later. And we're on to question 6. From here on out, I don't have the sender's name, and the reason for that is that Jerry rushed through everything and got me the questions. He emailed me the questions without giving me the source, and there's not really anything we could do about it. Jerry was really pressed for time. He tried to get the best he could out to me. So we've got all the questions. We just don't know who you are if you ask these questions. My apologies for that, but not a whole lot I can do about it right now. So on to question 6. And this one says, based on Jerry's review of the Partagas Black, I purchased a box of them. I noticed some of them have these tan-colored spots. What are these spots, and will they affect my cigars? Should I take the box back? Well, let's see. I don't ever remember particularly seeing them on a Partagas Black, but then again, I don't smoke very many of them. So, what you're seeing is one of two things. There are sunspots, and then there are water spots. Now, sunspots, typically you see them on lighter colored cigars. I really don't know what they would look like on a dark cigar. I don't. Well, I guess realistically they would look pretty much the same as they do on a light colored cigar because they're just a light colored speck. Now, what you're seeing is dark colored specks, which makes me think that it's possibly. Did you say lighter or darker? Tan colored, lighter. Okay, I got that cleared up. So you could either be seeing sunspots or water spots. And sunspots, mostly most of what I read, people say that these really make no difference in the cigar. They don't taste the difference because of them. They don't burn any differently because of them. So really they're just... some people say they're just like a neutral blemish. It's not an eyesore, but it's not really a beauty mark or anything either. It's just kind of this random thing that occurs in the wrapper, and some retailers or manufacturers claim that they are the sign of a higher end cigar or a more premium cigar, or they are the result of a better flavor, or this and that. The whole list goes on. But and there's also water spots, which are basically what I think the water spots are. I'm not 100% sure on this. Is like a water droplet that gets on the leaf during fermentation. So when you've got these bales fermenting in the fermentation barns or buildings, you get these little water droplets that are tight against the leaf of the cigar, and you got all this excess heat and fermentation going on, and that water droplet leaves a mark. It's usually like a light colored mark, and it's pretty much the same as a sunspot. It's from the best I can tell, it doesn't make a difference in the way the cigar tastes or smokes in any way, shape, or form. It's just kind of a neutral blemish, And I say neutral blemish because I don't think they're hideous. I just think they're just there. I really don't notice them unless I'm looking for them or unless they're really blatant. But in any case, I don't really concern myself with them, and that's why I just keep referring to them as neutral. But if you don't want them or they bother you, by all means, take the box back. Especially if you got the box locally. I mean, if you've got a box of cigars that looks like it's got some kind of form of chicken pox or something going on, and you've got these light spots all over your cigar, then definitely take them back. You don't want to be looking like you're smoking some disease-ridden cigar because they've got these spots all over them. So if you don't mind what they look like, don't worry about it. But if you don't like the way they look, take them back. I don't think that your retailer or your general cigar shop will have much of a problem with taking them back. So that's my opinion on that one. Okay, question 7 again. I don't know who wrote this. My apologies. It says, "Hey guys, I recently bought a used 30 count humidor off eBay. I took my time and seasoned it overnight, and everything looked good. But I wasn't sure if my hygrometer, even though I think I calibrated it correctly, was giving me an accurate reading. I ended up buying a digital one. For the past few days, I've been looking at the readings, and at night the humidity is about 68%, and in the day it's between 63 and 65. I can't get the humidity to 70%. What would be causing this? I do have cigars in there, and a few of them were probably dried out. Could those cigars be absorbing all the humidity, preventing the humidor from reaching 70%? I'm so confused." Well, I'm a little confused too, to be completely honest with you. Generally, when there's a humidity swing like that, you usually get the higher percentage in the daytime when it's warmer than at night, unless you have like a one of them thermostats with the timers on them. You set the temperature in your home for a lower temperature during the day while you're at work, and at night it raises up when you're home. And if that is the case, it's the the temperature. Also consider what you're reading in there. This 63 to 65 and 68% is all relative humidity, and what that means is it's relative to the air, in the box. So when you have warmer air, it can hold more humidity. See, this really confuses me at this point. I'm not 100% sure on this. I know that the higher the temperature, the more humid, or the more water vapors that are in the air. When it's cooler, it holds less. So potentially, if you take your humidor and you put it outside in the wintertime, and it's got a perfect seal on it, if the temperature inside the box starts to drop and gets down to, say, we'll just say 30 degrees, and you've got a perfect seal on the inside, your humidity's not leaking, it's not being wicked out of the humidor by the cold winter air. But, you've got a perfect seal, you just drop the temperature in the box. Your cigars have a potential for drying out because the air can't hold, the humidity that's required. At least that's everything that I've read, and that's how I understand it. And it's like taking an OtterBox. If an OtterBox is just a travel humidor, it's got a very tight seal on it. You can actually take your OtterBox and go fishing and drop it in the lake. And if you dive to the bottom of the lake and pull the OtterBox out, your cigars will be perfectly dry. It's got an awesome seal on it, and they just don't leak. If you take one of these OtterBoxes, these small plastic boxes, and you leave it in your car and you roll up the windows in the middle of the summer, that box will get incredibly hot. And if you accidentally do this and the box gets up to like 100 degrees, when you open up that humidor, those cigars will be wet. I don't think they'll actually feel wet, but they will be so overhumidified and spongy because of the excess heat that they're pretty much going to be ruined. So that's like one explanation of temperature for your humidor. Another thing could be that you're not reaching 70% because your humidor is not full enough. I'm not sure how many cigars you have in your particular humidor, but the more cigars you have in there, the better chance you have of maintaining a particular percentage of relative humidity. If you just have the Cherry Count humidor and you've got, say, 8 cigars in it, chances are you're not going to be able to hold humidity like you want to or like you need to. But if you get, say, 25 cigars in there, you won't have much problem. So if you have a low number of cigars, increase them. And there you go. Tell your wife that I told you to buy extra cigars. Because you really need the extra tobacco in there to create more of a buffer, or just to hold in all that extra humidity to keep things constant. Also keep an eye on your temperature, because that could be where your problem's coming in. Also, humidor could be a little too cool, so you're not getting the relative humidity high enough. So sorry I couldn't give you a better answer than that, but that's what I've got for you. So let's move right along. Question 8. Again, unknown sender, my apologies. It says, what should I do if I discover mold growing on the sides of my humidor, not my cigars, but the humidor itself? Is the humidor ruined? Well, it depends on your humidor. If you have if you have like one of these humidors from eBay, it's usually just one piece. It's a solid. You know what? I'm going to cut the camera off. I'm actually going to get a humidor so I can show you what I'm talking about. So I'll be back in a minute.